You just got promoted. Congratulations. Your salary jumped from $38,000 to $50,000 a year, and for about 3 weeks you felt like you were finally making it. You updated your LinkedIn, maybe treated yourself to dinner at that restaurant you always walk past but never enter, and started thinking about all the things you could finally afford. Fast forward 6 months, and somehow you're more stressed about money than you were before the raise. Your bank account looks eerily similar to what it used to, except now you have higher monthly payments for things you convinced yourself you deserved. Welcome to the Paycheck Mirage, where $50,000 somehow feels exactly like being broke with better credit card debt. My name is Nick, and I've spent way too much time figuring out why people making decent money still feel like they're drowning financially. If you're someone who looks at your salary and thinks it should be enough, but your bank account tells a completely different story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up making you question everything you thought you knew about money. Here's the thing that nobody talks about when they're celebrating that promotion or new job offer. $50,000 isn't actually $50,000. It's not even close. By the time the government takes their cut, your employer deducts benefits and life extracts its hidden fees. That supposedly solid middle-class income starts looking more like survival wages. But the real kicker isn't just the math, it's the psychology. Your brain doesn't adjust your expectations based on your take-home pay. It adjusts them based on that big number on your offer letter, and that's where everything starts falling apart. Let's do some uncomfortable math together. $50,000 sounds respectable until you realize that after federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, and Medicare, you're looking at maybe $38,000 actually hitting your account. That's roughly $3,000 per month in most states. Now, before you start thinking that $3,000 a month should be plenty, let's see where that money actually goes. The average rent for a decent one-bedroom apartment in most cities is pushing $1,500. That's already half your income gone before you've bought a single grocery item. Add in a car payment because you need reliable transportation to get to the job that pays you $50,000, and there goes another $400. Yeah, insurance for the car, insurance for your health, maybe some basic utilities, and suddenly you're down to about $800 for the entire month. $800 to cover food, gas, clothes, any kind of entertainment, unexpected expenses, and supposedly building wealth for your future. This is where the mirage becomes crystal clear. You're making what society considers decent money, but you're living like someone who makes minimum wage, except with better job titles and more student loan debt. The $50,000 salary is an illusion that tricks you into thinking you've made it, while the actual purchasing power keeps you stuck in the exact same financial patterns you had when you were making less. But here's where things get really twisted. Making $50,000 puts you in this weird financial purgatory where you earn too much to qualify for most assistance programs, but too little to actually build meaningful wealth. You're caught in the middle class squeeze where your income is just high enough to disqualify you from help, but not nearly high enough to not need it. It's like being stuck in the worst possible position at a poker table where you have just enough chips to stay in the game, but not enough to make any real moves. The psychological impact of this situation is devastating in ways most people don't recognize. When you're making minimum wage, you know you're broke. Your expectations align with your reality. You eat ramen, you shop at thrift stores, and you accept that luxuries aren't for you right now. There's a weird clarity in that struggle, but when you're making $50,000, society tells you that you should be comfortable. Your friends and family expect you to have your life together. You feel pressure to maintain a certain lifestyle because, after all, you're making good money. This creates what I call lifestyle inflation anxiety. You start buying things not because you can truly afford them, but because you feel like you should be able to afford them. That morning coffee habit that costs $5 might seem insignificant, but it represents something much deeper, like it's your brain trying to reconcile the gap between what you think your income should provide and what it actually provides. You're not just buying coffee, you're buying The feeling of being someone who can casually spend $5 without thinking about it. The credit card companies know this psychology better than you do. They see that $50,000 salary and immediately approve you for credit lines that would have been impossible when you were making $30,000. Suddenly you have access to $10,000 or $15,000 in available credit, and your brain starts treating that credit as extended income. The monthly payment on a $2,000 credit card balance feels manageable when you're making decent money, so you justify the purchase. Then another purchase, then another. This is how people making $50,000 end up with the same financial stress as people making $30,000. The only difference is that the $50,000 earner has nicer stuff to be stressed about. They're eating better food while worrying about money. They're driving a newer car while living paycheck to paycheck. They're wearing better clothes while their savings account stays empty. The mirage becomes even more powerful when you start comparing yourself to others in your income bracket. Social media doesn't help this situation. You see people who supposedly make similar money posting photos from vacations you can't afford, eating at restaurants that would blow your weekly budget, and buying things that seem completely out of reach. This creates a constant feeling that you're doing something wrong with your money, when in reality, most of those people are either financing their lifestyle with debt, or have financial advantages they're not posting about. What's particularly cruel about the $50,000 trap is that it's just enough money to make you feel guilty about financial stress. When you complain about money, people look at your salary and assume you're just bad with budgeting. They don't understand that after taxes, rent, transportation, and basic living expenses, there's virtually nothing left to budget. You end up feeling ashamed about your financial situation because, on paper, you should be fine. The housing market makes this mirage even more frustrating. $50,000 might qualify you for a mortgage in theory, but in practice, it qualifies you for homes that are either in terrible neighborhoods or require so much work that you'd need another $50,000 just to make them livable. You're stuck renting because buying seems impossible. But renting means you're building zero equity while watching your monthly payment disappear into someone else's investment. This is where the real psychological trap reveals itself. You start believing that the solution is simply making more money. If $50,000 feels like being broke, then surely $75,000 will solve everything. Then you get that next promotion and somehow $75,000 starts feeling exactly like $50,000 used to feel. Your expenses mysteriously expand to fill whatever income you have available, and you find yourself back in the same emotional place, just with a higher number on your paycheck. The Paycheck Mirage isn't just about $50,000, it's about the fundamental disconnect between gross income and actual financial freedom. It's about how society conditions us to judge our financial success based on salary numbers that don't reflect the reality of modern living costs. And it's about how easy it is to get trapped in a cycle where making more money never actually translates to feeling more financially secure. The most insidious part of this whole situation is how the $50,000 salary becomes a prison with really nice bars. You convince yourself that you just need to be smarter with your money, more disciplined, better at budgeting. You download every financial app, you read articles about meal prepping, and you genuinely believe that if you just optimize hard enough, you can make it work. Meanwhile, you're trying to squeeze water from a stone while pretending the stone is a perfectly adequate water source. This is where the financial advice industrial complex swoops in to make everything worse. Every blog post, every podcast, every YouTube video tells you that $50,000 is plenty to live on if you just follow their simple steps. Stop buying lattes, they say. Cook at home more. Use coupons. Find a side hustle. The advice isn't wrong technically, but it completely ignores the mathematical reality of your situation. You can cut every possible expense and still find yourself with maybe an extra $100 per month, which disappears the moment your car needs tires or your laptop decides to die. The side hustle suggestion is particularly entertaining. Sure, Let me just work another 20 hours per week on top of my full-time job so I can afford the basic dignity of not checking my bank balance before buying groceries. Nothing says work-life balance like turning every evening and weekend into another opportunity to generate income. The gig economy has convinced us that financial stress is just a personal motivation problem that can be solved with more entrepreneurial spirit and less sleep. Here's what really happens when you're trapped in the paycheck mirage. You develop this weird relationship with money where small purchases become massive internal debates. You'll spend 15 minutes in the grocery store comparing the price per ounce of pasta sauce because the difference between $2 and $3 feels genuinely significant. Then you'll go home and mindlessly pay $150 for car insurance without questioning whether you're getting ripped off because some expenses feel too big and complicated to challenge. You start making decisions based on monthly payments instead of actual costs, which is exactly how companies want you to think. That phone upgrade only costs $30 more per month. The streaming service is just $10. The gym membership is only $25. None of these feel like budget breakers individually, but collectively they're performing surgery on your financial future with 1,000 tiny cuts. Your death by 1,000 monthly subscriptions, wondering where your money went while staring at a phone that can do everything except pay your bills. The psychological toll of living in this financial limbo is exhausting in ways that people with actual money can't comprehend. You're constantly doing mental math in your head. Can I afford to go out to dinner with friends, or will that throw off my entire month? Is it worth driving across town to save $5 on something, or should I just pay the premium for convenience? Every decision becomes a cost-benefit analysis, and you start to realize that having a $50,000 salary doesn't buy you freedom. It buys you the privilege of being stressed about money while looking successful to people who don't know your bank account password. The dating world becomes particularly awkward when you're caught in the paycheck mirage. You want to be generous, you want to pay for dinners and activities, you want to seem like you have your life together. After all, you make decent money. But splitting every check becomes a survival strategy disguised as progressive values. You become really creative at suggesting activities that don't cost money while pretending it's because you value authentic connection over materialism. Which, to be fair, you probably do, but mostly because materialism is expensive and you're broke. Social situations become minefields of financial anxiety. Your friends want to go to that new restaurant where entrees start at $30. Your coworkers suggest a weekend trip that costs more than your monthly food budget. Someone's getting married and expects you to attend a destination wedding because, hey, you make good money, so obviously you can afford to fly across the country and stay in a hotel for a weekend. You start becoming the person who's always busy, always has other plans, always has some excuse for why you can't participate in activities that require spending money you don't actually have. The student loan situation makes everything exponentially worse if you're part of the generation that was told college was mandatory for success. You're paying $300 per month for the privilege of having qualified for a job that pays $50,000. It's like paying rent on knowledge you already consumed, except the knowledge doesn't keep you warm at night, and you can't eat your diploma when you run out of grocery money. The loan payment sits there every month like a monument to the promise that education would lead to financial security, a promise that feels increasingly like a pyramid scheme designed by people who went to college when it cost less than a decent used car. The healthcare system adds another layer of absurdity to the $50,000 experience. You have insurance through your employer, which sounds great until you realize that having insurance and being able to afford healthcare are two completely different things. Your deductible is $3,000, which might as well be $3 million given your budget constraints. You start treating minor health issues like financial decisions. Is this weird pain worth a $200 urgent care visit, or should I just wait and see if it goes away? You become a medical gambler, betting your health against your bank account and hoping nothing serious happens until you can afford to find out what's wrong. The retirement planning conversation becomes particularly hilarious when you're living the $50,000 struggle. Financial advisors tell you to save 15% of your income for retirement, which would be $7,500 per year. That's more than some people spend on rent in certain parts of the country, but somehow you're supposed to just casually set that aside while also paying for current survival. The math doesn't work, but everyone pretends it does. You're supposed to sacrifice your present quality of life for a future that feels completely theoretical when you can barely afford your current reality. This is where the generational wealth gap becomes crystal clear. People whose parents can help with down payments, emergency expenses, or just general life costs have a completely different relationship with a $50,000 salary. When you don't have family money as a safety net, that income has to stretch further and work harder. Every financial setback becomes a potential catastrophe because there's no backup plan, no family loan, no inherited cushion to fall back on. You're playing financial life on expert mode while watching other people play on easy, and they're confused about why you're struggling with the same game they're winning. The housing market specifically seems designed to mock people making $50,000. You can afford rent, but you can't save for a down payment because rent takes up too much of your income. You're trapped paying someone else's mortgage while being told that renting is just throwing money away. The advice to move somewhere cheaper ignores the reality that cheaper places typically offer fewer job opportunities and moving costs money you don't have. You're geographically trapped by your income level, stuck in expensive areas because that's where the jobs are, but unable to afford the areas where the jobs are located. The whole system feels rigged against the $50,000 earner in ways that are almost comedic if they weren't so financially devastating. You make too much for assistance, but too little for comfort. You're successful enough to be envied by people making less, but struggling enough to envy people making more. You're caught in this bizarre financial middle ground where everyone assumes you're doing fine while you're quietly drowning in slow motion, wondering how a salary that seemed so promising turned into such an elaborate form of financial quicksand. The truly maddening part about the $50,000 salary is how it trains you to become an expert at financial gymnastics that would impress Olympic judges. You develop skills that have no practical value outside of poverty management. You can calculate the exact number of days until payday while standing in the grocery store checkout line. You know which gas stations have the cheapest prices within a 15-mile radius. You've memorized the schedule for every happy hour in your city because $3 tacos at 4:30 on a Tuesday might be your only shot at eating out this month. You become fluent in the language of financial procrastination. Your vocabulary expands to include phrases like, "I'll get it next paycheck," and "let me check my account first," and the classic, "I'm trying to be more mindful about spending." These aren't lies. They're survival strategies disguised as personal growth. You've turned being broke into a philosophical lifestyle choice because admitting you can't afford something feels more embarrassing than pretending you're on some kind of voluntary financial detox. The subscription economy was clearly designed by people who understand exactly how the $50,000 brain works. They know you can justify $9.99 per month for almost anything. Netflix, Spotify, that meditation app you use twice, the gym membership that makes you feel athletic just by existing on your credit card statement. Each subscription feels negligible in isolation, but collectively they're like financial termites eating away at your foundation while you're focused on the big obvious expenses. The worst part is how these companies make canceling feel like a personal failure. They'll offer you 3 months free if you're thinking about leaving, which your brain interprets as 3 months of found money rather than 3 more months of delayed financial responsibility. You become trapped in subscription relationships that are harder to escape than most romantic ones and significantly more expensive over time. Credit card companies have turned the $50,000 demographic into an art form. They know exactly how much credit to offer to keep you floating but never quite swimming. They understand that someone making $50,000 will responsibly manage a $5,000 credit limit right up until something unexpected happens. Then that $5,000 becomes a lifeline, and suddenly you're paying 23% interest on car repairs that cost more than your monthly take-home pay. So here's the brutal truth about the $50,000 salary. It's not your math skills that are broken, it's the math itself. You're not failing at budgeting, you're succeeding at surviving in a system designed to keep you running in place while convincing you that the treadmill is actually a path to somewhere better. The real mirage isn't just the money, it's the promise that working harder and earning more will eventually set you free. When the game is rigged to expand your expenses faster than your income can grow.